Restore Thrive, we're back. Thanks for coming back, guys. What we wanted to talk about tonight, we were discussing this earlier, is people's kind of outdated ideas about stretching. We're going to use the calf as an example. So your calf muscles, these muscles that sit behind your lower leg, get stretched pretty regularly, but in a very kind of old school way. Just simply coming up to the wall, putting one foot back, and then just kind of hanging out here. So while that may feel like something is stretching, we have to consider that your body is a system of systems. So when you're doing something like that, what we consider or call static stretching, all you're doing is you're taking that muscle and you're stretching what ends up being the weakest part of that muscle. And you have to consider that that muscle starts right above your knee and goes down to your heel, and it crosses two joints. So right away, we have to consider the joints that muscle connects around or passes through when we're trying to deal with any sort of limitation we may perceive in what our calf feels like. So when we talk about systems-based approach to dealing with flexibility, we don't like to talk about flexibility in and of itself because that conjures up those pictures of the wall stretch. We want to think about mobility, and that encapsulates a few different things. Part of that is the soft tissue pliability, the ability of that muscle to bend and deform into different shapes. Part of that is the joint mobility, the way the joint moves around or the muscle moves around that joint. And part of that is what we call neuromuscular tension, and that's the interface where the nerves and the muscles come together and create a resting tension in that muscle. And a lot of times what we perceive as stiffness or tightness in a muscle is simply your nervous system guarding you from letting that muscle go into a longer range of motion that you don't have the strength to control. So this is why we take some different approaches in how we deal with stiffness. So the calf is a great example. The wall stretch with the calf is not in and of itself a bad stretch, but only captures, again, some of those weaker parts of the muscle tissue in that calf complex. When we grab something like a foam roll, what we can do is we can put direct pressure throughout that musculature. Now we can get into those thicker parts of the tissue. I can roll a little bit side to side. That creates a different stimulus. I can contract and squeeze that muscle hard, create more tension in the muscle, and then relax. That's a simple concept we call contract relax from the PNF school of thought. And basically what that's doing is addressing that neuromuscular interface where we're squeezing hard, getting that strong input into the muscle, and then relaxing and allowing that muscle to get into a longer range. And that in and of itself can be an effective way to open up motion. The other thing we have to think about is joint mobility. And this is where our bands come into play. So if I think that I'm stiff through my calf, well, how am I going to be able to tell? Is it just calf stiffness or is it my ankle that's actually limited here? So we can take something like a band and put it around our ankle. If I had this anchored to something behind me here, and now I can start to explore, do I have that normal range of motion that this joint that the calf passes by is supposed to move with here? So that's just a couple different ideas in terms of how to address your mobility issues. Again, remember, it's three things. It's not just can I stretch out a muscle. It's does that muscle have normal range of motion and pliability if it's compressed? Do you have that neuromuscular resting tension, the right amount of tension where you can go through that full range with good strength and good control? And are you able to move around those joints the way you're supposed to move? So if you guys have any more questions about this, feel free to leave a comment or question below. We'll talk to you guys again soon.